Hello, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm Vicky Newham, author and story coach, and I'm here this morning with writer Luke Deckard. And this is the number, I think it's 3 we're at now, in our crime fiction manuscript showcase videos. Yes, I am still having trouble with that name, and yes, I am still mentioning it. Luke, good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on.
So, would you like to just tell us then a little bit about you? So, we know your name. Is that the name that you're writing under?
Yes, it's my pen name.
Okay.
Other people can do they can do a little bit of investigating if they want to find out my real name, which probably wouldn't be very hard.
Oh, that sounds very mysterious. And whereabouts do you live? Where are you in this?
I live in St. Albans now. I've given up the high life of living in London to live in the suburbs.
I like suburbs. I think there's lots to be said for a bit of lurking in the suburbs.
Yeah. Yes.
So let's just think a little bit then about about you. So I'm going to ask you a little bit, if that's okay, about you, Luke, as a writer, and then think a little bit about and talk about your writing. So how long have you been writing, and whereabouts are you currently at then in your writing journey?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's the kind of cliche answer of, oh, I've been writing since I was a kid, which is true though. When I was a kid, I would do little short stories, and then I got heavily into music, and I was write songs and lyrics and things like that, and had a little band that I'd play with. And that was always fun. So I've always been very interested in writing. I've done it a little bit since I was a kid. I didn't start taking it seriously until my kind of early 20s, about 24, when I decided to kind of take a go at writing a little mystery book, and accomplished that, and thought, hey, this is quite fun, and then kind of went from there on a little writing journey that eventually led me to an MA and now a PhD in creative writing. And I've been able to publish various short stories and things like that, and now publishing writing scripts for a podcast and stuff, which has been really, really fun, and currently working on a really fun novel called Wasteland, which is a 1920s historical suspense novel, that's kind of where I've come from and where I'm at now.
Okie dokie. So before we talk about your manuscript, which sounds fascinating, I have to say, so you mentioned there something about writing for a podcast. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I write for it's a company called Noiser, and the series that I work on is called Short History of. It's a really fun kind of docudrama immersive podcast, narrated by Paul McGann, who was famously the 8th Doctor of Doctor Who, which is really cool. And yeah, they're kind of their audio dramas, which are fascinating. And you dive into various subjects. It could be anything from Blackbeard to Tutankhamun, and you have these fun bits of writing this fun narration and telling a story mixed with bringing in experts in these fields and writing these quite fascinating episodes about these interesting historical topics, and yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm very pleased that the episodes get a heck of a lot of listens per week, which is what you want.
Definitely, yeah. Whether it's eyes on our work or ears,
yeah,
doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah.
And so you were telling me, I think, that you've been listed so for the Amazon New Voices Awards. So tell us a little bit about that. That's very exciting. Well done.
Thank you. That was a surprise. That was shocking. Mainly because there were so many people who submitted, and to be shortlisted within the top 10 was really humbling, because I think there was somewhere along 160 entries, and it was purely down to ticket holders and book club subscribers for Capital Crime,
Yeah.
reading and voting on these entries. So to be one of the 10 picked is quite, that's why it's shocking. It's just is unexpected, but it's humbling and exciting at the same time. And I think they announced the winner at the end of towards the end of this month. I mean, I think being shortlisted is a win in and of itself, to be honest.
Most definitely. That's amazing. Well, let's face it, whatever people think about Amazon, they know their commercial fiction.
They do.
And so is that, Luke, is that with the book that you're going to talk to us about?
That is, that's Wasteland. Yeah.
Ooh, I bet your email inbox has been receiving a few little visitors.
Yeah. There's been a few, which has been really nice to see the interest start to kind of grow a little bit. So yeah, that's been fun.
So let's just think a little bit then about what is it then that you're looking for with regards to this project. So are you looking for an agent, a publisher, both?
Yeah, both really. I mean, I like the idea of I like the idea of really finding an agent who can kind of work with me as a writer, and kind of go to bat for me with with publishers and stuff like that. I'm aware that not every writer necessarily needs one, and there's many different avenues, but it is something that I am looking for, because I think Wasteland would benefit nicely from that sort of representation. Yeah.
And just to clarify then for people watching, so are you open to approaches from publishers?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's I'm happy to speak to anyone. Really, there's I've spoken with indie publishers and stuff like that in the past, and things, and that's definitely something that's always open. That door is always open. Yeah.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit then about the sorts of crime fiction writers that you like. I love this question. Basically, I'm just really nosy, and I like to know what people are reading. And so,
yes.
Who do you like? What recent novels have you read? And then just thought, gosh darn it, I wish I'd written that flipping thing.
Yeah, I know. I feel like that all the time whenever I read not all the time, but a lot of the time when I read a book, I'm like, God, this is so good. I wonder if I can repurpose this idea without anyone noticing. It's like that famous video on YouTube, everything is a remix. So it's like, hey, it's true. But no, recent, my influences and writers I really like, I'm quite genre focused, and my main thing really is I love hard-boiled detective novels. So I'm a big fan of Raymond Chandler and those classics, but also their contemporaries, Robert B. Parker, Sarah Paretsky, Walter Mosley, Philip Kerr. Really, really love that kind of stuff. But then I do read a lot of stuff that's outside of crime. So I am a very big fan of C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and Mary Shelley and Neil Gaiman and people like that. So I try to read a lot of different sorts of things. But yeah, those are individuals who come to my mind right now who I find really engaging, and I love to kind of dive into their work when I can.
Fantastic. And what about recent books that you've read and you've
recent? Oh yeah, so I did, because of the current academic work that I'm doing. I'm rereading and reading a lot of kind of older stuff at the moment. So I recently reread a book by Robert B. Parker called Early Autumn, which I can't remember when it was published, sometime in the 80s. I found it incredibly fascinating, really interesting. But then I've also been rereading Sarah Paretsky's Indemnity Only, and Philip Kerr's last novel, Metropolis, which so immersive and so rich in detail. I absolutely loved it. And then, and actually a book I finished this morning was Earl Stanley Gardner's The Case of the Velvet Claws, which is the very first Perry Mason novel, which was it's interesting, a little predictable but interesting.
I love Perry Mason.
Yes, the new show on HBO is terrific. If anyone has seen it, go see it.
No, that. Don't tell me about something that I can't watch. No, I'm just joking.
I think it's on Now TV as well. I think it's on Now TV as well. So that we can get here.
I feel a $9.99 month-long subscription coming on for
Completely worth it.
Okay, so let's before I ask you about your PhD, let's talk about your book, your manuscript, so the one that we're here to talk about. So you said it's called Wasteland. So do you want to just tell us a little bit then about, so what's the subgenre?
I mean, it's hard-boiled crime.
Okay, and is that completely written?
It is, yeah. The novel is done. I think it's around 84,000 words, give or take a couple of hundred.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it a standalone or part of a series?
It is the beginning of a series. The detective is someone who I have plans for further installments for him. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, well, that's good. But if this is the first one, then that's a great stage to be at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in terms of where this would get placed, so when this book is published, where is it going to sit on the bookshelf? So in other words, whose work currently, well, not necessarily currently, but whose work is it similar to, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that it is perfectly aligned with Raymond Chandler, Philip Kerr, and Walter Mosley. It's got the hard-boiled stuff which runs throughout all these guys, but I say Philip Kerr and Walter Mosley because they're historical hard-boiled, and that's why they, he fits my novel, my detective fits right in with those dudes.
Yeah. And so, what about the setting then? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's set in 1920s Edinburgh, which I love. It's so gothic and so atmospheric. And so gritty that it's something that, it's one of those things where when I was doing some of my preliminary research, I wasn't seeing, I didn't find a lot of 1920s Edinburgh. You have Peaky Blinders, which is a perfect 1920s Birmingham, well, not perfect, but a really good gritty 1920s Birmingham, stuff like that. And then you have Downton Abbey, which is it's 1920s, but I wanted something set. I love Scotland and I love Edinburgh, and I wanted something set in that place. And I just found it such a compelling city. And, I love the books of, Ian Rankin and whatnot, and, the way the city is brought to life within them. But wanting to go back to a kind of a darker point in that city's history was really attractive to me.
So then, just thinking about, I'm not hearing a Scots accent here, so I'm just wondering, what do you have any connections with Scotland? Or I mean, you've said a little bit about sort of what appeals, why it appeals to you. Do you have any connections at all with Scotland? Or
I mean, I think no. Maybe somewhere deep in my ancestry there's probably something. I think there is, actually, but it's very, very, very far away. There's nothing directly with me with Scotland, and that actually is reflected in my detective. My detective is an outsider. He's not English, so he kind of comes into Edinburgh a lot of in the same way that my first visits to the city were, where it's this creepy, interesting, beautiful city, and you're fascinated by the people and the cultural and the cultural differences and things like that. So I didn't want to try and imitate a Scots person. I didn't want to, didn't have any interest in doing that. I wanted it to be the sort of fish out of water approach to this. So because I often think in terms of social commentary and stuff like that, it's always interesting when the outsider comes in and looks at stuff, and that was kind of the approach with it. So there's nothing directly for me, but I did kind of put that in with my character.
So you said he's an outsider, so where's he from then?
He's originally from Chicago. This was an interesting kind of journey with my protagonist, he was kind of incepted during my master's years ago, and originally he was English, and through conversations with various people, I ended up tweaking that and making him American, and I think that changed the whole dynamic and tone of what I was doing, to kind of produce this interesting outsider perspective, because I've always been a big fan of writers like Hemingway and Fitzgerald and whatnot, who have their American protagonists in European settings, and I like the conflict that arises from that. And so I thought, actually, I love these guys, I love their work. I want to kind of do that, but with the hard-boiled genre.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit then, if you can, about why this story. What was it that motivated you to to tell this particular story?
Yeah, well, there's I kind of, with anything that I write, I kind of want it to have something to say that's somewhat relevant and important. I storytelling is for fun. It's not necessarily meant to be a thesis or anything like that, but there's a lot of important things you can do with storytelling. And so I kind of went on the hunt looking for a story. And when I started researching Edinburgh at this time, I came across a lot of interesting stories about Eastern European immigrants living there in the 1920s and what was happening to them at that time, especially right before the First World War and right after the First World War, where they were essentially, a lot of them were being kicked out. A lot of women and children were over here without little work, and their husbands were stranded in Europe and not being allowed to come back. And I found that so sad, and interesting, that I thought, this is something I never really knew about. And it's something I don't really come across in historical research. So I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit with this. So that's kind of the the heart of the story, is kind of, it looks at this kind of particular series of instances that were happening at that time, for a number of people.
Fab. Okay, so we're going to just talk a little bit now then about the plot and the characters. So it's the dreaded elevator pitch time. So
yes.
Just give us your elevator pitch.
Yeah. Private investigator races to Edinburgh to save a woman before she's murdered, but when he arrives, she's already missing, and with her, the truth behind his father's death.
Oh, fab. I like that.
Good.
That's really intriguing. And so what then, so I'm thinking about hooks, the hooks that the publishing industry are keen on. So what would you say is hooky about your book? What would you say sort of unique about it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of hook, I think character and place are big hooks for this. It's a very character-driven story. There's a really fun, thrilling, suspenseful plot that is there to kind of facilitate the character, and you really dive into that kind of the minds of the characters. So I think you're gonna get that fun, kind of cynical, wisecracking, hard-boiled detective stuff that a lot of people love, with this really unique historical setting of 20s Edinburgh, that I think, I would read that book, I would watch that show. You know what I mean? So I think the hook is kind of really kind of placed around those particular things.
Okay, and so you're talking about the story there. What is it that kicks the story off?
Yeah, well, it starts off with a dead dad and a stuffed bear. where my detective my detective gets a parcel from his estranged father, and it's a bit kind of jarring for him at first, but as he looks into it, finds hidden inside this stuffed bear is a 20,000 pound emerald ring, and that sets off this journey to find this woman in Edinburgh, because immediately after he finds this ring, he then finds out that his dad's dead, and finds out there's people chasing this ring and chasing this woman, and he's the only one who knows. So if he doesn't go and save this person, she's just potentially she's probably going to get murdered by these gangsters who are looking for this ring, who don't realize that he actually possesses the ring. So it's this kind of race to save this person's life, but also there's some connection that Logan, my detective, needs to find out between this woman and his dad. And if she's taken out of the picture, a lot of secrets are going to go to the grave.
Mm. So you mentioned that your main character, I think, then is called Logan. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about him, and why will your readers root for him?
Yeah, no, Logan, he's an interesting guy, I think. He's a bit of a jaded guy. I would say the First World War, has taken quite a toll on him. He's quite unhappy. He's a bit damaged from it. There's a lot of PTSD that affects him, but it doesn't necessarily cripple him. It's something he's struggling to cope with. But despite being jaded and a bit cynical, he still has a very strong kind of moral core. And he does what needs to be done, and he's really there to sort of help the underdogs, help the people in need. And he's sort of pushing back at corruption and at ignorance and greed and immorality, which is the stuff that I think we want in a hero. We want in a good guy. But at the same time, he does have his fair share of demons. So I would, he's not really a dark knight. He's not a white knight. I think he's kind of somewhere in the gray there, which I think makes it just all a bit more compelling. He's
great.
Yeah.
So if we think about themes, what would you say are some of the key themes in Wasteland?
Yeah, well, I think the title kind of gives some of that away. It really is looking at the wasteland of life, especially after the First World War. It's very, life is not pretty. There's a lot of, the death toll is huge. The homeless issue is incredibly big in Britain at that time. And so you kind of look at life post First World War and how that sort of wasted a lot of people, but it also kind of looks at, life circumstances and how that can create, wastelands of life for various people. And it's really about how we maneuver through this terrain, and in many ways try to work for a better and more hopeful future. Mm-hmm. So while it has this sort of kind of dark overtone of life is quite bitter, there is an attempt to kind of push for a hopeful future, if we can. Mm-hmm. It's not always possible, but some try, some succeed, some don't. So kind of it really explores that sort of idea.
Mm. Okay, so thinking now a little bit about, why would readers and agents and editors, who are, after all, their readers too, mm-hmm. why would they want to read your novel? Why would they be interested in it, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, the story is good and compelling, and I think the characters are as well. And I think that's, for me, when I read books, I want to be drawn to the characters. I'm less interested in kind of hyper pitches and whatnot, where, but yeah, so I look for interesting characters and stuff that I can kind of sink my teeth into. And I think this book has that. It's got that rich characters, but it still has that sort of fun, suspenseful, historic yarn that I think a lot of commercial readers will also want to dive into, because they'll enjoy the adventure of it as well.
Okay, and what's it like pace wise then? Because I must admit, something I really love about hard-boiled fiction, is the pace, really.
Yeah.
So kind of, what's the pace like, and what's the atmosphere of the book like?
Yeah, pace. It's a very pacey book. I mean, given that, being quite steeped in hard-boiled fiction, I didn't want something that was going to be crazy long. I looked at a lot of the classic writers and looked at their length and how things moved along, and it definitely has a fun, fast-paced kind of feel to it, that someone can read in a couple of days. It's gonna be a fun jaunt, I think.
And in terms of, obviously we're writing fiction and we're telling stories, but do you think, does Wasteland tap into any current, concerns, do you think, in society, or sort of particular trends, or, zeitgeist?
Yeah. I would say so. I think history and historical fiction is a really unique form to sort of explore our past to then understand our present. And the way Wasteland looks at some of the immigration issues and concerns really do tap into contemporary Britain and what's going on between the UK and the EU and immigrants and whatnot. So there are striking parallels between what was going on 100 years ago and what's going on now. And so I think even though the book is set 100 years ago, there's going to be a lot that people can look at and think, oh, wow, this is actually shockingly similar to what's going on now. What can we do to have a better future, kind of get us out of this wasteland that we've kind of been in, personally and socially. So I think it taps into that aspect quite well.
And you were telling me earlier that this is something I believe then that you've been researching a little bit with your PhD. So do you want to just tell us just really briefly about that?
Yeah, it's been an interesting road. So the research for this book has been incredibly fun. It's involved jaunts up to Edinburgh, to the museums up there, just walking the streets and getting a feel of the land, but also in terms of kind of outside of the kind of that kind of practical research, there then is also a heavy amount of really interesting kind of academic research, and that's anything from reading historical World War I accounts to deep histories of Scotland and Edinburgh and Britain, and little bits of the States as well, given that my protagonist is from there, but also the fun stuff of reading loads of really great fiction, to kind of get a really good sense of genre and feel and place. So the kind of the research is very multifaceted, and really it's research that I think, whether someone is doing a PhD or not, is still the same kind of research that I think most people would probably do as much as they can for their whatever their current work in progress is. But yeah.
Sounds fascinating. And I think all of that, that sort of concentrated research, and those recce's are just amazing, aren't they? There's nothing like, I mean, obviously we all spend time on the internet and, looking at on Google Earth and Street Map and, whatever, but there's nothing like actually walking those streets.
Yes.
And that was with the notebook and the camera, and I just absolutely love it. I think it really, really helps to bring the, the story and the setting along. And really does bring some, sort of realism or authenticity, or, whatever you call it.
It's true. If someone went to scroll through my Instagram, you would see hundreds of Edinburgh photos, and all of those are from my research jaunts up there. It is true that what was fun during some of that stuff was I would go there and walk around, and just by walking around, I would stumble upon something that I might not have seen on Google Earth. And that happened once where I stumbled into a graveyard that was so creepy, and I was like, well, this has to be in the book now. This setting there has to be a confrontation in this place, because it's too good not to do that.
Fantastic, love it. So last section now, just thinking about where people can contact you. So do you want to just tell us how can we get in touch with you? So your website and etc.
Yes, I have a blog somewhere. I very rarely do it. The two best places to contact me are email and Twitter. My Twitter handle is Luke Writes Crime. And my email is the same, but at gmail.com. Those are the two easiest ways for people to contact me.
Fantastic. And you were telling me earlier about your role with the Crime Writers Association. So do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, that's been a lot of fun. It started off a while ago where I was convening for the London chapter, and then got kind of started building some ideas with my friend Sam Blake, who is in Ireland, and from there, so what I do now is I do kind of events coordination for the CWA, and people might have remembered the historical panel that we did earlier this year, followed by the walking through a crime scene, and now the Inside the Criminal Mind series, and it's just a heck of a lot of fun putting these programs together that I think are incredibly beneficial for my writing and other people's writing, to kind of hear from experts about what works and what doesn't work in manuscripts, really.
And I bet that's really helped you to kind of get to know people and network. And
that's also been a lot of fun. Is you get to meet various, like I said, experts and authors, and learn from them, build friendships with them as well. And so that's been a lot of fun, being able to do that over the past kind of, I guess, 18 months or so now. It's good fun. Fantastic.
And so just thinking about sort of links then, so you've got links with the CWA. Do you have any links with any other sort of organizations? I'm just thinking about kind of promotion and sort of marketing potential here, bookshops, anything like that might be useful.
I mean, in terms of links, I'm very well connected to the Sherlock Holmes Society of London. I used to be on their board for a couple of years. Obviously, CWA. I know that Kingston, the university where I study, they're very much big into promoting, individuals who were on their programs or in their programs who carry on and do other things. Also linked to the Society of Authors as well, and others, I'm sure, that I can't think of off the top of my head, but those are kind of the main ones that come to mind at the moment. I'm also really friendly with some of the local bookstores here in St. Albans as well. So there's always potential for for a bit of nice marketing.
Brilliant. And that sounds absolutely fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. And, obviously, we haven't chatted before. We were just saying that, before record. And so, it's been a pleasure for me, genuinely, to
Yeah,
hear
same.
about your writing. And I feel very, very excited for you. I think this sounds really great. And I think with the Amazon New Voices award, and that interest that's been popping into your email box, etc. I think that's sort of very, very exciting. So just before we finish, is there anything else? This is your space. Before we finish, anything else that you wanted to add, that you'd sort of like people to know about you, or anything really?
No. I feel I'm pretty, I think people can gather quite a lot from just my social media and engagement with me there. I know I guess that'd be one of the main things is, connect with me on social media. Happy to chat with people and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I think we've covered so much stuff today that there's kind of nothing else that I can really think of currently, unless you're going to talk about my fascination with photography, but I don't think we want to do that right now.
No, well, I was wondering, oh my God, is he going to produce a cat, or suddenly say, I've got a puppy, but
no, we don't have any pets yet. Maybe one day. I wouldn't
thinking, on my part.
Yes, I would love a cat one day, but maybe.
So I'm going to press stop recording.
Cool. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.